Hello and welcome to Stage Door Live, a brand new web programme for the community of artists here in Ireland. My name is Amy Kidd, I'm an actor and I'll be your host this evening. When the director Kevin Michael Reid came to me and he said that he thought he wanted to create a space where you could get all of the latest headlines and hot topics from the arts community in one place, I thought that it was a great idea. So every week I'll be giving you a little news roundup of arts-related hot topics, and I'll be speaking with some guest speakers that live and work here in Ireland. We hope you enjoy the show. This evening I'll be joined by Julie Kelleher, Artistic Director of the Everyman Theatre in Cork, which celebrated its 123rd anniversary this week. Then I'll be having a chat with Gavin Kostick, award-winning playwright and literary manager for Fishamble, Ireland's leading new play company, about streaming live theatre, Fishamble's Tiny Plays Challenge, and adapting creative processes during lockdown. Hello and welcome to Stage Door Live, episode 2. So here we find ourselves halfway through week 4 of our lockdown in Ireland. Congratulations everyone for making it this far. I really hope that you're all doing okay. So thanks for joining us for some theatre news and some theatre chats. And thanks to Tom Creed and to Annie Ryan for being our first guests last. We've had some really great feedback from the interviews with the two of them. So thank you very much to them, and thank you to everyone that watched our last episode and that came back for this one. So at the moment we have some members of our team on our social media channels. That's Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. So if you have any comments during the show or any questions for the guests that we're going to be bringing on later, then please do hit us up on those and we'll make sure that we can ask those questions to the guest and post some comments on the screen there. First, the news. So following on from last week's chat with Tom Creed, the NCFA held an information session last Friday with speakers from SIPTU, Irish Equity, and the Tenancy Protection Service. They discussed everything from artists' studio rentals and Arts Council funding to enhanced illness benefits and the Arts Help Desk for pandemic payments, which we mentioned last week. There's a written summary of those meetings and a complete video of the meeting available on the NCFA website. Although there were representatives of the Department of Culture, Heritage and Gaeltacht present at Friday's NCFA meeting, the department and the Minister, Josepha Madigan, have remained fairly quiet since the initial backlash to their funding announcement earlier this month. Meanwhile, producing companies and advocacy groups continue to call for stronger government support for our industry. Theatre for Young Audiences Ireland said, "Let us continue to invest in theatre for young audiences with a clear-eyed recognition of its value as a sector and also of its real monetary costs." Some good news for artists is that both new and established funding opportunities are going ahead, like the Arts Council's Next Generation Artists Award, which closes for application on May the 14th. Thursday last week, Screen Ireland released a statement on new funding schemes for filmmakers, including an additional €2 million for strategic slate development and €1 million for enhanced development support. As our lawmakers here in Ireland are debating just how and when to start rolling back the restrictions in the country, the artists and art workers remain in the dark about just when we might hope to be reunited with our audiences live and in the flesh. Some experts are sharing their best guesses on the subject. At a recent New York Times roundtable, Professor Z.K. Emanuel predicted that mass gatherings like concerts and sports events won't resume in the USA until autumn 2021. Whether the same timeline is likely this side of the Atlantic Ocean does remain to be seen. What we do know, though, is that the government confirmed yesterday that mass gatherings of over 5,000 people will definitely not be licensed before September here in Ireland. Dennis Desmond of MCD Music, the company promoting and producing Electric Picnic this year, remains confident. And he has said that he has no doubt that the September Music Festival will go ahead. No statement has been made yet by Dublin Fringe Festival or Dublin Theatre Festival as to whether they are expecting to go ahead, and if they do, what form that might take. Since Edinburgh Fringe in August was cancelled for the first time in the festival's history, who knows? We do know, however, that Dublin Fringe team is still at work reading applications, according to a social media post recently. And they also announced that they are recruiting for a general manager. So this seems to be a positive indication that they do expect Fringe's shows to go on. Theatres seem to have had little guidance or indication of what to expect. Neil Murray, the co-artistic director of the Abbey, tweeted, "And what about less than 5,000? Have I missed something?" We're confused too, Neil. Of course, there are many much-loved festivals that we know for sure will not be going ahead this summer, but artists around the world are continuing to adapt to this new normal. The perpetually mysterious Banksy has captured the global imagination yet again with a new installation featured on his Instagram. And the UK playwright Dan Rebelato has a new YouTube series, Playwrights in Lockdown, which so far featured interviews with Zinni Harris, Alistair McDowell, Lucy Kirkwood and Tim Crouch. So that's a good one to check out. Over here, Dublin Youth Theatre have launched a similar series called Ask the Pro, which starts tonight with special guest, the brilliant Brian Burrows. And unsurprisingly, Netflix announced soaring profits yesterday. But if you've already exhausted their catalogue, you can check out the archive footage that has been posted by many Irish and international artists. Companies like Fishamble, Druid and Pam Pan have released many past productions that you can view online. And this is the final week of the New Theatre's Fight Back Festival, which has been showcasing brand new short plays every night and ends this Friday, April 24th. So that's it from the news. Now I would like to introduce Julie Kelleher. Julie is the artistic director of the Everyman Theatre in Cork, and with a background in performance, direction, producing, and holding a BA and MA from UCC, Julie was the theatre's youngest ever artistic director when she was appointed in 2014. Since then, she has directed many productions there, such as recently Superior People or When to Kill Your Friends by Enda Walsh and The Lonesome West by Martin McDonagh. The Everyman has also produced a number of exciting Irish and world premieres during Julie's time there, including Asking for It, the world premiere of the stage adaptation of Louise O'Neill's best-selling book, which was a Everyman landmark co-production. Hello, Julie.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you keeping?
Very good, thanks. So my first question is all about Cork. So Corkonians do call Cork the true capital of Ireland, so I've been told, and everyone that lives in Cork seems to think that it is just the best city in the world. What makes Cork so great?
Well, so as a proud Cork woman, I will disabuse nobody of those ideas of Cork as the true capital or the best city or any of that stuff. Though that doesn't stop me from being really fond of Dublin at the same time, or plenty of other places around the country. But I suppose the things that really make it a great place to work and a great place to make art is that it's really small, it's really connected. You can kind of, you know, when things like 2 kilometre restrictions aren't in play, you can walk around the city, you know, kind of end to end in half an hour. It's really picturesque, and it has, I suppose, a very particular character in terms of, you know, the attitude of people, I guess, which is very there's a sense that people sending you up, or that that you wouldn't take yourself too seriously in Cork, I guess, which I enjoy. So yeah, so that gives it, I suppose, its own kind of flavour, and I suppose it's a great supporter of art, of music, of writing, of theatre over the years. So there's a really sense that the city and the people here value the work.
Lovely. So congratulations on the 123rd anniversary of the Everyman. The theatre has such a rich, long history. I wonder if you could tell everyone a bit about that.
Sure. So in 1897, the building was first opened as Dan Larry's Palace of the Varieties. So Dan Larry was the guy who also built the Olympia in Dublin. So the two theatres have some similarities in terms of decor and style and things. So people might describe it as kind of chocolate boxy. It's got lots of red paint and kind of gilt-edged boxes, and it's very decorative and beautiful. We love it. So it's a 650-seater now, but so back in the late 1890s and the early part of the 20th century, it was a music hall, really. So it had a kind of a broad variety of different types of performance happening on the stage there, and reportedly the likes of Charlie Chaplin and Laurel and Hardy once tread the boards at the Everyman. So that's a kind of a fascinating historical. Well, if it's a fact, I don't know, but it seems like it's a fact. So
yeah,
it would have been open as a music hall or as Palace of the Varieties through this. Well, like around the time of Spanish flu, it did close. We have some interesting kind of archival material to show that the ledger at the time shows that the building was closed for a spell around that time, but it came back happily. And once, I suppose, the kind of talkies came into play and the kind of, the time of vaudeville and music hall died off, so too did the Palace of the Varieties, but it was reimagined as the Palace Cinema then. So it became a cinema really from the, I guess, the early 1930s through to the kind of middle 80s. And when it was closed, it was closed for a number of years. Through that time, it hosted Cork Film Festival. It also hosted, I think, a couple of the Cork Opera House seasons when Cork Opera House's building burned down in 1959. So it has been a refuge for other companies at times as well. And so in the late 80s, the Everyman Company, which was an independent production company working in the city on a semi-professional basis, they bought the building, or they were enabled to buy the building. So this company had been in operation since the early 60s, producing like an amazing spectrum of work from like some of the early first productions of John B. Keane's work through to really interesting contemporary European work at the time. So the aspirations of that company were very much for high quality professional work, though the actors typically working in the company were earning elsewhere, had other jobs and were rehearsing kind of on a part-time basis. So that meant it was really challenging for the company through that period, those kind of 30 odd years to get kind of public subsidy for the work that they were doing, though I think that the goals are not dissimilar from the kind of goals that we have for the work that we make now. So they were enabled to buy this building in the late 80s, and then in 1990 it opened in more or less the guise that we have it now, and has I suppose the way the work is made has migrated from that kind of semi-professional scenario into the fully professional outfit that we know it as now. And I think, I don't know, I could be the 7th or 8th artistic director. I think I'm not certain. I should be better at my.
You must have grown up. You must have grown up going to see shows in the Everyman. I'm assuming.
I did. Yeah. So the first straight play I ever saw was in the theatre. It was in the Everyman. So as a child, both the Everyman and Cork Opera House run a Christmas panto. So we used to go to the Opera House panto when I was a child, but so I didn't realise really until I was nearly 12 that things other than panto happened in the theatre. So
Wow.
but yes, my first straight play was at the Everyman, and I found a whole pile of old tickets lately, actually going through some boxes. So I think it was Plough Stars that I saw there, which was directed by the woman who also kind of taught me at drama classes outside school and things. So yes, there's a long relationship with the place. It's also the place I remember doing my first audition for a show. You know, I've been in shows there, directed shows there. So yeah, there's a long connection and a great love for the place.
So your history, your personal history, and the history of the theatre and the buildings, very interwoven then.
It is, for sure, and I think that's true of a lot of the people who work with us locally, and for our staff there's a great sense of grow for the building, and a sense of caretakership, you know, really caring about it and looking after it. Because there's something a bit magical. It's beautiful to stand on the stage there and look out into the auditorium, you know.
Yeah, wow. And the theatre, actually, this is not the first time that it has closed due to a pandemic. That's right, isn't it?
That's right. So yeah, so it closed for a short spell during the Spanish flu in 1918, but was resilient enough to come back at that time. So hopefully this will be the case this time too.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. And speaking of that, actually, you're fundraising at the moment, because your normal funding relies a lot on income from ticket sales, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So this will be a big hit. So I wonder, could you explain to people a bit about how the theatre would usually be funded, and about how the general public can support the Everyman at the moment?
So in a normal year, about 90% of the Everyman's turnover comes from ticket sales, or a combination of ticket sales, box office, shop sales, bar sales, fundraising, and then the remainder comes from public subsidy. So it means that we're heavily reliant on ticket sales. So it on one level, it's a real privilege, because it certainly gives me the sense that there's kind of a direct relationship, or a sense that the audience are the real major stakeholder in what it is that we do, and you know, we live or die by you know, what they decide to buy tickets to, and so I suppose for those reasons we have a really broad program. So it's all live performance with a little bit of film mixed in. So we're the home for some of the major festivals in the city. We have a kind of a varied program of live music, of comedy, of theatre and opera, that it comes from companies who are touring to us, but also work that we make ourselves. So, and we also, as I mentioned, do a Christmas panto. So that's a big income generator for us in any given year. And also the support that we get from our local authority and from Cork, or from the Arts Council, it's really valuable. You know, it enables us to take, I suppose, more risks in terms of programming, particularly where theatre is concerned. So it means that we're able to present contemporary work that doesn't necessarily draw people in droves, but it's the kind of work that students of theatre who are studying in the city can come and see, that other theatre makers in the city can come and see, and that people who have a very particular interest in contemporary live art, or you know, more broadly in culture, that they really do engage with that part of the programme. So it's really important to us to be able to cater for as broad a range of appetites as we can.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I suppose one of the reasons why we're fundraising, we had invested a number of years ago in a fundraising manager who's very brilliant, Anna Marie Collins. So because we're so reliant on box office, and because public subsidy is comparatively low, it means that things like artist development and investing in our building are really challenging for us, because really we're going from show to show and trying to get those, you know, just keep those up and running and all of that. So as you can imagine, with a building as old as ours, as 123 years, it's a bit crusty in places. Our rooftops are fairly ramshackle. Our there's plenty of kind of mouldy corners and all of that. And of course, all of the focus is on the auditorium and keeping that really beautiful, but the back of house is less beautiful, as many visiting companies who have travelled to us will attest. So, to keep, to keep us able to be open and have a building that's safe, and be able to invest in the kind of work that we think is interesting and that we think is really valuable. Those are the reasons why we need that extra support, I guess. And we've had a great response so far to some of the fundraising drive, which is fantastic. And we're also conscious that that there's lots of needy causes, I guess, at the moment, in terms of the spectrum of, charities and the healthcare workers, but also, seeing the brilliant work that our friends at the Civic are doing in terms of the Artist Hardship Fund there. So, it's always difficult to kind of set your stall out and state the reasons why, your support is so valuable. But I suppose for us, over the last few weeks, we've seen more than ever the sense of interdependence between those of us that work in buildings, the building itself, and the people who make the work, for the audiences who come to the building. So that sense that it really all does rely on each other, and we need all of the pieces to be kind of working for us to get back to having. I'm not sure that we had necessarily a very healthy sector before all of this started. So hopefully this is an opportunity for us to get back to a really to get to a place where we have a healthier sector.
Yeah. So we have a question. Sorry, Kevin, was what you just said live, or do I need to repeat that? We have a question from Ailish, and the question was, artistically, what future does Julie see for the Everyman once everything gets back to normal?
So we'd like to get back. Thank you for the question, Ailish. We'd like to get back to our artistic mission, which is very much balanced between maintaining tradition and breaking new ground. So I suppose for us that means being able to present classic and canonical work both in theatre and in opera, that can generate some box office for us and help us then invest in new work, in composers, in writers, in performers who are making work today. So we put out an announcement today that we've just had to cancel a show that was meant to be in rehearsal at the moment called Trilogy, which is a really good example, I guess, of that. I suppose what we see as our artistic future. So it was a piece of work, a trio of operas, 3 operas, 2 by local composers from Cork, Irene Buckley and John O'Brien, and then they were paired with a new production of Riders to the Sea. So the idea was that we would present all 3 of those. So I think that's a really good encapsulation of what we'd like to continue to do, which is to make really high quality work that encourages artists who are contemporary, as well as platforming really brilliant work for audiences to see as well.
Great. So if someone wants to donate to your fundraising, do they do that through your website?
Yes, you can go onto our homepage. You'll find the Donate Now button there, and you'll find a little bit more information about the theatre or any of our social media channels. You'll find directions to those. We're also, we've been asking patrons who are holding tickets to consider donating the price of those tickets to us where shows are cancelled or where people can't attend rescheduled dates and things like that. So that's a slow process because our box office is working remotely, but so we'll see how that goes too. But yeah.
Great. And a final question, similar-ish to what Ailish asked you, but that was specific to the Everyman. In a broader sense, what would you like to see in Irish theatre in the sector generally or on the stages in post-COVID Ireland?
I'd like to see, and this is one of the demands, I guess, from the NCFA, and this goes outside of theatre generally, but I'd like to see universal basic income, so that it would mean that we weren't in a scenario again like this where people were having to necessarily fight for survival, and that everybody was looked after. So all of our artists and all of our freelance and independent workers could rely on that at a minimum. And I think that would give a sense that it would maybe go some way to kind of counteract the sense of inequality that exists there, where, you know, those of us who work in a salaried context or have salaries conferred upon us for the work that we do versus people who don't. I think that's a real can cause tension and division, and I find it really kind of uncomfortable, I guess. So I'd love to work towards seeing that happen across the board.
Totally. And just before I let you go, we have another social media question, which was relayed to me, and it's from Barry. And I believe it was, do you believe that equity, the union, will strengthen as we go forward past this?
I hope so. I think some of the supports that unions offered in the past are sorely needed now, in that sense of advocating on behalf, particularly of actors with one voice. I'd love to see SIP2 and equity kind of stepping up there, and for the actors community in particular to help them advocate and to help them make the cases, you know, on their behalf.
Yeah, it does really feel recently actually that there's a rise again in that kind of union style support that I think kind of trailed for a while maybe, but especially with national campaign as well. And okay, great. So that
I should say, if I could, Amy, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I also sit on the board of Theatre Forum, and since we're on that point, there is a meeting tomorrow, a Zoom meeting tomorrow morning at 11 for independent and freelance practitioners. So you'll find the details to register for that Zoom link on the Theatre Forum social media. So do check that out. I think it's worth, you know, there'll hopefully be a whole range of practitioners, from designers and performers right across the board. So it'll be, if people are interested in that, it'll be well worth attending.
That's great. Thank you so much for letting us and anyone watching know about that. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So now we're going to hear from multidisciplinary artist Valentina Gaia Lops, whose conversation with a friend turned into an art project that has garnered international attention. Here's more about the project, which is called Quarantined of the World.
My name is Valentina Gaia Lops, and I am a multidisciplinary artist from Italy, based in Dublin. My main areas of work are visual and performance art, and I am very much interested into anything that has to do with human behavior, inclusion, activism, and community work. This is a photographic documentary about people's experiences of quarantine around the world, which was born by accident out of a Zoom meeting with a friend. We decided to take some pictures and to have some fun. And after sharing her images on social media, I decided to caption a little bit of the conversation we have had while we were shooting these photographs. And we talked about the way that we as a society are now adapting to a new way of living and a new way of interacting, a new way of working, and the way we are transferring everything that we were used to do in real life into a virtual world, and how challenging this is for many of us right now. I transcribed these little bits of conversation into her caption. and the reaction from social media was incredible. People could really relate to those words, and in less than a week the post was viral and I have many more cities on a waiting list right now. So this project picked up really fast and had a success that I could not even imagine. This is now my full-time job during my quarantine. I was not living my quarantine in a scheduled way. I was one of those that was kind of going with the flow. But since I started taking care of this project, my routine had to change. I had to actually structure myself around specific times in order to be able to run this project in a functional way. This is how I'm spending my quarantine at the moment, and I'm very happy to do this work because I think this is one of the most beautiful projects I've ever done. At the beginning, friends were interested in checking this thing out, but later on, as the project developed, a lot of people that I didn't know started contacting me from all over the world, and they wanted to share their experience, or they were curious about the project. They wanted to talk, they wanted to give it a go. And so very quickly I had to rearrange my entire quarantine and schedule so many appointments from so many different places. The sessions that I have with people go in two parts. The first part is a conversation that we have where we introduce each other and we talk about our experience or where we come from, and then we get into the deep talk of quarantine life, and this is the most delicate part because that's when people usually start sharing very intimate and highly emotional information. And only when we have reached an emotional state in which we both feel comfortable and safe to share, to listen, to speak, we then pass to the phase number 2, which is taking pictures. At that point, we are much more relaxed and we have broken the ice somehow. And taking picture is the fun part where we both decide how to frame what we've been talking about. I wouldn't be able to shoot anything if people weren't helping me frame. And people know how they feel comfortable in front of a screen. So this is also something that usually doesn't happen in real life. You know, people are positioning the screen in ways that they feel comfortable with. So this takes away a lot of embarrassment, a lot of camera shyness, and I love this. I re-listen to the stories and to the conversations that we've been sharing. And I make decisions about what to take and what to leave of these conversations. And I don't only make decisions based on my own artistic idea of how this should be. I also try to be as authentic as possible, and I want to portray the experience of this person in the most realistic way. I have a conversation that lasts for 2 hours and I have to come up with a story based on that conversation, and I absolutely love to do that. I have a lot of respect for everything they're doing with me because I feel that they are trusting me with accessing their lives, and they give me something that belongs to them, something very private, something very intense. And they trust me to share it with the world in a visual way and in a written way. I don't know how realistic this idea is and if I will ever be able to afford to print a book, but deep inside I have this need to leave something to the future generation, something that we all went through in this specific and very important historical time that probably will never happen again, or I hope it won't happen again. I think this is a very important documentation of how we have lived and survived in these difficult times. It's a very big testimony of how we are so different, even when united by the same experience. We have individual different circumstances that are surrounding us while we live this emergency, and these circumstances affect us and affect the way we react to things. We are all grieving and we are all exposed to a very intense moment right now, and our mental health is affected by it in some ways, in so many different ways for each one of us. And I think that sharing this will also highlight how unique and different we all are from each other, but also how similar we are in some other ways. The essence and the goal of this project is not to show beautiful pictures or to invent captivating stories. I think the aim of this project is to connect and to share. We all want to be heard, and I love listening to what people have to say, but I also love to be heard myself, and I always take advantage to share my own experience with the people I interview, because I think that it's a way to relate, but it's also a way of sharing emotional content. And I find this very beautiful. I find that this gives me hope for a better future, and a future where people are going to be more united. I hope that you are having a safe quarantine and that you're enjoying being creative and you're finding a healthy way to cope with the situation.
Quarantined of the World has been invited by Matrice Women Artist Collective to be exhibited in an online exhibition which will run from 1st of May to 30th of July. More information on that will be available on her Instagram and on her website. And now I would like to welcome Gavin Kostick. As literary manager for Fishamble, Gavin has worked with many of Ireland's playwrights and playmakers over the years. Indeed, Gavin is an award-winning playwright himself, his works having been produced all over Ireland and internationally. These include The Ashfire, The Flesh Addict, and recently Gym Swim Party, written with Danielle Galligan for Dublin Fringe 2019. He also recently completed a new translation of The Odyssey, which has been podcast by Rise Production, and Gavin was in London recently, just before lockdown began, for the West End opening of Fishamble's On Blueberry Hill by Sebastian Barry at Trafalgar Studios, a production which is sadly now cut short. Hello, Gavin.
Hello, Amy. Good to be here. Thank you for asking me.
How's it going?
Yeah, all right. All right. I suppose I'm someone who kind of needs to keep structure going. So I'm kind of one of these, like, the alarm clock goes off at the same time, and I sort of get up and I do the same things in order. And my entire life was actually dedicated to doing as little work as I possibly could, and I've to some extent failed in that. But I reckon I can only do about 4 hours work, actual work a day. So I tend to try and get that block in the morning when there's no one around, and then turn to the rest of the day after that.
Are you early rising? at the moment?
Oh yeah. It's 6 a.m, and there's a perfectly legit down by the Royal Canal, which people might know, where Brendan Behan is sat on his park bench, and there's a lovely urban stretch of canal there, and I go down that way.
I love that area. And do you do your 4-hour chunk all in one go, or do you do kind of 20-minute burst break? What does that morning kind of look like for you?
Yeah, so as I say, I work for Fishamble, and Fishamble have an excellent general manager and producer, Eva Scanlon, and Eva is very keen that we do it all properly, no more, no less, and we look after each other. So 4 hours is your classic 2 hours coffee break, hour and 3/4 stop,
Lovely. So my first proper question, I suppose, is Fishamble has a very long history of championing artists in Ireland, and we're very quick on the pulse to bring out the Tiny Plays Challenge to stimulate artists and generate new work while in quarantine. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and how that's been going, and also how this has affected Fishamble's approach to reaching out to artists generally?
Yeah, those are big questions. In a way, the Tiny Play Challenge, I suppose, came easy to us because we were around for the banking crash, and one of our initial responses to the banking crash was actually walking home one day with Jim Cullerton, of the artistic director of Fishamble, and we were looking to find a big play that would deal with the sheer enormity of the banking crash, which of course seemed like the most enormous thing ever at that time, and it's pretty big. And we thought, well, instead of commissioning one play, we'd ask the public for tiny plays for Ireland, which became 2 sets of tiny plays, which were done in Project Art Centre 2011, 2012, and out of which came more plays. So you're right, I am the literary manager with Fishamble, and one of my I've rules of thumb that I go with, maxims, and one of them is our beginnings never know our ends, which is it's a quote from Pinter, who himself was quoting someone else, T.S. Eliot, I think. And so you just try and do a good thing and hope that it rolls forward. And the tiny plays have had a life that we could never have imagined, both in themselves and as projects and so around the world. So I guess we did have a go-to there, given that it seemed a good time to give people in homes or at work, if they're still at work, but mainly at home, the chance to speak, the chance to work something out. It's like being able to express a snapshot, an image of what you're going through within the format of a tiny play. And within Fishamble, we have the capacity with the website to put up a selection every week. So we've been doing that. And who knows where they'll end up, but I'm pleased with them so far, pleased with what we're getting in. And we'll have a big announcement, which I can never remember in Fishamble whether I'm allowed to announce things, but I'm pretty sure I can say that we'll be going for a global version of this. It'll go global, probably Friday, but keep an eye on the Fishamble website. So there'll be an opportunity around the world, any language you like, and we'll see what we get. So because we think it's a time, when the world needs to speak to itself, essentially.
Is there a possibility that we just got an exclusive? Is
that I think it's on the website. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, but it'll come out, and I think the idea it's actually, to go right off on a tangent. I wrote this essay for Fishamble that nobody ever read, but I wrote it anyway, called "Politics of Fishamble," and I think in the end, Fishamble are a creature of the Enlightenment, by which I mean we stand for the right of public voices or private voices in the public sphere, that the society is a better place if there is the ability to articulate dramatically different viewpoints for people to engage with in whatever platform, whatever way that happens. So the tiny plays suits us, I think, as a model, because it's the voices of the playwrights, I guess, being curated by us. So it's not like this is what Fishamble are saying. This is what people are saying, and this is how they're expressing themselves.
Just to mention as well, we've had 2 comments on social media neither of which are questions, but one was from Maura saying, great to see Gavin, and one was from Robert saying, I love Gavin. So you have supporters in the audience, Mr. Kostick.
Great. Well, it's great. You know, it's great. Thank you very much. Great to have moral support. Keep them coming. Like, if you're there and you think, I like him, stick a message in, and I'd be delighted. You know, yeah. And what was the other part of the question? So the short of the tiny plays is keep an eye on the website, the Fishamble website, and you should see some announcements in the next few days, and we should have a nice big go at that. Sorry, the second part. What was the second part then?
Second part after tiny plays was how has this affected your Fishamble's approach to reaching out to artists? Or do you think tiny plays is kind of in that place for now and then it will return?
Oh, I think that's a good point. It is different. See, I think tiny plays doesn't differentiate. Whoever wants to enter can enter. That's us reaching out to the public. And artists are members of the public like anyone else, so they can enter if they want to. But that's reaching out really to everyone. And I wouldn't like to overcook it. I mean, to some extent, people are at home and they have time in a way they didn't normally, and they've got an unusual life. And people are going through some quite big things. You know, if you go through your Facebook feed, not everyone is, you know, people are being touched by death. And people are being, you know, having difficult situations and so on. So the tiny plays is really an offer for anyone to formulate those thoughts into drama, you know, to share. So it's not really, so that's a bit different. With regard to artists, I suppose if I roll back a bit, you're quite right. A week before the first restrictions came in, I was in London, in Trafalgar Square in the West End, and I was looking at 600 people packed out in Trafalgar Studios for Sebastian Barry's On Blueberry Hill, directed by Jim of Fishamble. So it was a great moment, and it was really great to see a load of Irish people there, London Irish, and the audience was all that. And within a week it had gone. So we lost, you know, a 9-week West End run. So then we turned really to our artists that we work with and have programmed. So like anyone, we'd have a program of work, which is anything up to 18 months from now, as it were. So I suppose what we've done is just try to roll forward, keeping those projects alive within the guidelines and common sense, and keep working on them. As a development company, we can do that. We can have these meetings like this we're having here, Amy, and talk and move on and get actors in, and so on. So, you know, we're very aware of that aspect to the production work. We're also able to keep going on to duets. So that's a program we have with Dublin Fringe and the Irish Theatre Institute to support artists to create their own tourable work. Now, at the moment, they can't be announced. I can remember not to announce that one because the Fringe handles that. The Fringe handles the Fringe launch. But I mean, people will know because the applications have happened, as you would apply for a Fringe show, that that's underway. So we're able to do that. So those are in development. So our Fishamble shows are on shows in development. I can't tell you the Fishamble ones because they're all secret. They're all secret. And then we would have support opportunities, play script development opportunities. So we call it the New Play Clinic, which is really a kind of catch-all for supporting the development of new drama. So tomorrow morning, I'll be sitting down with Ross Gaynor, graduate of the Lear, actor, but also now turning to writing, working with Lynn Parker, director, and a cast of 8, fabulous cast of 8, on a Zoom development morning. So those kind of activities remain ongoing, and they seem to be manageable. You know?
Oh, that's great that you're able to carry on with New Play Clinic. That did cross my mind. Lovely. I'll move on to our second question then. So, like other companies, Fishamble have have thrown up on the interweb past production. So more kind of philosophically, I suppose, on the amount of live streaming that's going on. theatre that is built for an audience being available to people just in their bedrooms or their living rooms, do you think that's going to have any particular long-standing effect on theatre? Or what impact do you think us becoming accustomed to viewing theatre in that way might have?
I think in the sense that everything has an effect because it does, it will have an effect, but sometimes we don't know what those long-term effects will be yet. You know, it does feel like, I mean, certainly not just theatre, like the whole thing is an accelerator in terms of, you know, things were moving online a bit, say with, you know, buying books or buying clothes, and this will accelerate that thing. But I think on the other hand, I'm always excited about things, and I really look for, I'm very interested in what theatre online looks like. So yes, Fishamble did put up inside the GPO archive footage from Whitethorn films of the play by Colin Murphy. Now that was actually done in the GPO on the 100th anniversary, 2016 of the actual Rising. It couldn't have been more thrilling in terms of that event and that play. That was really extraordinary. So we're very happy to show that now because that can't be done again. So we're showing something that is was unique, is special, can't be reproduced, and it was handily the exact anniversary when we, you know, released it. But yeah, I mean, we're all going to be faced with issues of monetization, like, and how do we feel about that? Selling to, who owns the stuff, who's copywriting his own, owning the stuff, all that kind of thing. What is theatre? But I'm kind of interested because I'm pretty sure that film theatre isn't theatre. It's television or it's a film or something. It's a record of performance, but it's not the live experience for sure. But there are other things I quite like. There have been these plays written over the centuries which were impossible to stage. They were never meant to stage because they couldn't be, and then of course they were. But things like the Cenci, the barbaric comedies, I'm kind of interested now in I wouldn't mind commissioning a few writers write things that are absolutely designed to be read, but they're plays that you couldn't ever imagine staging. Yeah, and then we could work out how to stage them, which would be great. But I think that the way in which the online relationship happens, a recording of a performance, you know, or a live performance, it's good, it's attractive. I'm not dissing it, but I think in terms of the creativity we can bring to what that experience is like, is very interesting. And you know, everything will change, you know, and it does change. So there has been work with virtual reality theatre now, more and more so, you know. So this is just flat screen working to and from a laptop, but there are certainly VR crossover theatre experiences which are pretty interesting, mixing live and high tech, you know. So I think there's a lot to come yet.
Mixed medium kind of AV and I wonder if this will then push those boundaries a step further again, while people are at home kind of with just their technology around to maybe play around with those kind of ideas.
I think inevitably people are going to think about it, you know, and then you wonder what kind of model will support that. I mean, we could have free theatre. Any country could have free theatre. We have free galleries. People don't think about not paying to go to gallery. They have free gallery. You have other free things, but then you need much more support by the state, a higher tax base, much more support to the thing. And yeah, we'd make free available work that could be accessed from home. So there's that gap there. I was talking to, again, on the It's Not Just Us. I was talking to a yoga teacher the other day, very similar. They can run an online yoga class and actually make the money or more money than they did, but they can't quite give the teaching the quality it deserves because they're not quite in the room with them to really see how it's working. Yeah. And at the same time, other yoga teachers are naturally going, here's my free yoga class. So people are going, oh, I'll do the free yoga class. So all that is an ongoing kind of cloud that we need to work through.
We just got a question from Killian asking, do you think that audiences will return to theatres after this?
Yeah, I do. I think sensible organisations. It was great listening to Julia earlier. I think she's fantastic. So I think Julie's just absolutely the person to listen to about this. And if she thinks it can be done, it can be done.
Right.
But she rightly pointed out that 1918 the theatres were shut down in almost exactly the same way in the Spanish flu. Theatres were shut down, markets were shut down, exact same. Isolation hospitals were built. So that was a year of no theatre. We know that 1644 to 1660, theatres were shut down in England under the Republic, and they came back. So the end of the Shakespearean era ends 1644, and then there's a whole new start in 1660. And we even call it Restoration Theatre after the Restoration of theatre. And that had the introduction of female actors, which hadn't been seen before that. So you could have an exciting view that when people come back, there might be shifts in things that might be exciting. But people went to theatre. We are said to have the plague to thank for the sonnets of Shakespeare. The theatres shut down for a year. He writes sonnets. We have those. There'd be a lot of people writing poetry now. Because that's what you do. You make something. So I do think theatre will continue in the same way that music had to adapt and change, but essentially became more about the live experience. If you get everything free on Spotify, what can you not get free? Well, you can't get being in the room with the band. So there's a bit of that going on, and we'll see. But yeah, sure, culturally, there'll be a time when people might not like sitting next to other people for a bit. I don't know, we'll see how that goes.
That's true, though. Historically speaking, anytime there's been a ban or closure of theatres, it does seem that it's come back with more kind of life than ever before. So hopefully that happens again.
Yeah. Oh, I think so. Yeah, I look forward to that. See, you put it another way, a lot of people like making theatre. They actually enjoy doing it. It's a job people want to do. God help us. And then a lot of people like being at theatre. Like the ticket sales for the Dublin Theatre Festival, the Cork Midsummer, Dublin Fringe, they're big numbers. They're six-figure numbers of people who are buying tickets to see these shows. And not all theatre is subsidised theatre. People like me tend to think in the subsidised world. But the Bord Gosh is a 3,000-seater theatre that puts on large scales musicals for people to have their night out and their, for their quality large-scale entertainment. So yeah, there's an appetite for theatre and there's an appetite for people to make it. So we just have to connect it all back together again somehow.
Yeah. Great. So as a playwright and a dramaturg, you've already kind of touched on your own routine, what life looks like for you at the moment, getting up early, getting work done in the morning. But if there are people out there that are compelled to use this time to be productive or to create, what kind of advice do you have for budding playwrights or creators or people with creative ideas out there at the moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's a good question. I'll think about it slowly, actually, because there's so much sort of flying around at the moment, and you can tell, not everyone's in the same space as everyone else about how they're spending their time. Not everyone's home environment is as conducive to that kind of time, So, I'm aware of the multiplicity. But, at a very simple level, I'd actually, I take a little time to reflect. And reflection for me is if you can find some quiet time on your own and you can sit so you can feel a weight in your bum and you spend some time breathing and allow whatever you're feeling, be in connection with whatever you're feeling, because I tell you, one of the great curses on creativity is the ought to be feeling. I ought to be doing this. I ought to feel this way. I ought to feel sad if somebody dies. I ought to feel happy if somebody else does well in life. Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't have, so if you end up second guessing your own feelings, you think you should be being creative and you're not, and it gets tangled. So the first thing I'd encourage people to do is actually sit down and breathe. Now, having said that, I have the most expensive coffee cup you can get in Dublin, and it's a Villeroy and Bosch. It's about that big, and it's a Villeroy and Bosch one from Arnott's. It's very good. And I have this little Biotelli coffee pot. So what I do is I get up when there's no one up. I make myself a cup of coffee. I have my cup of coffee. I go for my morning jog, older gentleman slow jog. But I don't care what people think. Like, so I walk up, jog down the canal, and I come home. And so this is people who are looking to do some creative work. What I do is I go by a thing called the Pomodoro Method. It's how I did the Odyssey. So I got a copy of the Odyssey in Greek, English. So every word Greek, every word English. And I got a timer, which is a 25 minutes timer you use for timing cookery. And I put it to 25 minutes, it goes tick, 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 like that. And you put it to one side and you work for 25 minutes. And you don't judge yourself. You're just working. You're trying to do good work. So for 25 minutes, you do the good work. You take a 5-minute break. It'll go ring. You don't even have to look at your watch. You don't have to look at your phone, nothing. Don't look at the internet before you do any of this. Go up, coffee, walk, back, sit down, boom. 25 minutes, 5-minute break, look out the window, do not look at your phone, set it for 25 minutes, do another 25 minutes, and then stop for the day. And the good thing about that is a lot of people get stuck, and I've done this myself, because they stop at a hard point. So they're writing or drawing or whatever, and they get stuck with what they're doing, don't know what to do, and they walk away. That means when they think about the thing, they feel bad because they don't know what to do, right? So you can work your way through that eventually. You go, oh, I've got an idea. Easier to cut it off when you're doing well. So that when you go to pick it up the next day, yeah, you're excited about it, you know where you're at, and it means the whole day, it's a pleasure to think about it. I'm going to finish that drawing. But I'm not going to finish it. I'm going to do 25. Yeah, I'm going to carry on for 25 minutes. I'm going to be pleased with that. Put it away. There you go. That's some advice for you.
No, that's nice. And yeah, it's interesting because the first thing you said about just breathing and not putting pressure on yourself to create is very similar to kind of the bulk of the conversation that I had with Annie Ryan last week. So it's kind of reconfirms that for people, and then that's nice as a kind of maybe anyone that is feeling compelled to create or to test out their productivity, maybe that would be a nice method for them to kind of have a low intensity experiment with while they have the time to do it, see if that suits them.
I mean, absolutely, everyone's, themselves, and some people work at night, and I've never believed that there's a certain length of time that it takes to write a play. I've known plays to be written in a week, less. I've known the longest one I knew took 9 years between its first page, not by me, but someone else, took 9 years from the first page to the end. So you get this huge variety. So not
the wait.
It was a great play. It was a great play, but I'll leave that one for now. But it was worth the wait. Yeah. But so having said this variety, I would say to people that jog along creatively, jog along, do a bit every day, Monday to Friday, take your days off, just keep it ticking. It's amazing what you can do if you just jog along with it. So even now, we have, for many people, there's time. People are going to have all this time. But you don't, if you try and use all that time creatively all the time, you'll just burn yourself out. So I just keep it jogging along nicely, do a thing a day, and you'll be happy. I think you'll be happy.
And so many of us entering this lockdown were pretty burnt out already, because that was such a plague on society already, the kind of burnout pandemic almost. So in a way, people should use this time to recover if they were in that state, rather than work themselves another hole in the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. So the risk of going off on a tangent, I was very interested in what Julie had to say. And I think in terms of the arts, you absolutely should look into the National Campaign for the Arts and what they're looking for to make arts and theatre across the spectrum of the arts a more viable thing, profession. I think what possibly people who don't work in the arts don't because it's not necessarily their day-to-day experience, don't quite experience is that the arts tips very rapidly from unemployment or partial employment, limited employment, to oddly overemployment, because it's very hard to turn work down when it comes, because you're aware that each job might only last 4 weeks, 6 weeks, if you're lucky. So it's hard to say no when it comes. So people will say yes very intensely. And as you say, overwork for very modest amounts of money, and that gets draining. And then the fear, the genuine fear, is if you don't take the work, you won't be employed. So, I mean, a little piece from me, I think that I'd love the government to really start thinking about is that, as I said, people want to work in the cultural sector. There's a demand for it. How do we know? Because of all the third level courses that people are taking that lead to that sector. We know that the cultural sector is a very large sector in Europe. We know that it's growing. We know that it has, I don't like everything about the arts being an instrument of the economy or so forth, but we can see it's a growing sector across Europe. It's an important part of, live experiences mixing in with cities and towns, the Galway and Limerick and Cork. And so it's a very important and growing area, but there isn't the resources in it to make it viable across the spectrum as there should be. So if the state is supporting all the kind of third level routes into this sector, but not, so, the arts in Ireland are, I think, the lowest supported in the European Union in terms of state support. So, and this has been an argument that's been going on for a while. So if the state could come in now and take the opportunity of this crisis to really see how the support could be through life, that would be absolutely a step in the right direction, should we say, and then we'd all be happy. Or we'd all get on with it. Well, we get on with it anyway.
Yeah, but an opportunity to shake things up a bit.
Absolutely.
Now I have a very hard-hitting question.
Oh, yeah.
What is Mrs. Butterdish's take on the COVID pandemic? How is she coping?
Yeah. Well, you'd have to ask her. I could go and ask her if you like. Well, people may not. I mean, we did do a Christmas show. Myself, Morgan Cook, Danny Gallagher, and Janet Moran, which were conversations with Mrs. Butterdish, and that's always done live on stage. Has been. People may know. She crops up on I chat with her on a Saturday morning. I mean, it is quite genuinely the case that I sit down on a Saturday morning. I'm first up, and I do the Saturday shop. And before I do the Saturday shop, I have my toast, and there's Butterdish, and I. The Butterdish, I think. I mean, I'd have to ask her, but I think she and I would see eye to eye on the regularity of cooking. I think that you keep things in order. Actually, I'll leave Mrs. Butterdish to I'll talk about my mother. I think my mother's. I'm pleased to say is still alive. She's with my father is staying within a flat as per the instructions. So they're working their way through. There's nothing wrong with a sense of duty, an old school sense of duty. So you keep things, if you're a bit in doubt, you just keep things ticking over. The food needs to be bought, people need to be fed. You may as well do it well, and you
keep on
sort
keeping
of go
on.
along. I think so. To some extent. Yeah. There you go. I'll ask her. There you go.
Lovely. So I was going to finish up by asking you what you hope to see in theatre in Ireland, both on the stages and in the sectors post-pandemic. I think you kind of touched a little bit on it already. So anything beyond kind of what you already said about, revisiting the funding and the way it kind of all works.
Oh, there's that, and it's almost like, I mean, I'm romanticising now, Amy, so forgive me, but it would almost be a lifetime's work for people like me in my generation to see the sector left in a much more viable state for the next generation again, that they wouldn't even have to think about it. The full range of supports so that we artists can engage with the public for a richer life for everyone in Ireland, so we can all join in. I mean, that's the point. So that's the bigger picture. I think in terms of, if you went for a stimulus package, what is happening is works that could be produced from March now, moving forward into August already, and probably looking into September, are being delayed. So they need to be produced. There is going to be a wave of pent-up production of quality works which are ready to go. I keep dropping back into theatre, but this is across the arts. And there'll be a wave of development works because people put money into development strands for new works to reflect the new world we're living in, which will also demand to be heard. So there's going to be 2 waves of major quality works coming out, probably in stages because of the social distancing restrictions, but in different ways. So I would love to see, the departments for culture get its head around that. I'm sure they're really working hard and thinking about it, how to support these wave of activity in a safe manner to come through into not just, the things that were delayed, but all the new things that are being made as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. Lovely. So that everything. Do you have any last words? Or
I know, look after yourselves, everyone,
Thank you so much for joining us. Bye, Gavin Kostick.
Okay. Cheers, Amy. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on. Bye.
And that is everything from us this evening. So one last thing before we go is to mention that today is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So our lovely Earth has been getting a bit of a break from car fuels and all sorts of things over the past few weeks. Milan announced yesterday a plan to add 35 kilometres of new cycle and pedestrian paths to encourage people to walk and cycle to work once the businesses reopen, which is good news for the environment. And in the animal kingdom, swans have returned to the canals of Venice, and a panda couple in Hong Kong have finally consummated their relationship after 10 years of trying. So on that note, happy Earth Day to all of you. Stay safe, stay well. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good night.